I feel like mental health is a lot to do with emotional well-being, your cognitive well-being, how you perceive yourself, how you perceive others, how you perceive the world.
Mental health means
Um,
to me well-being of yourself, and I think I put it on par as it's. I think it's part of day-to-day life now. Looking after your mental health, it's not something that you should put to the bottom. It's something that I personally view as it should be at the top of your list. It goes along with your physical health. If you, for example, scrape your knee, you're gonna look after yourself. If you hurt your arm, you're gonna look after yourself. Same way, I believe that mental health. If you're going through a tough time or if you're not feeling too good, is something that needs to be actioned on and something that you need to look after and get help with.
I think that mental health is, as a lot of people already know, it's one aspect of health. And so we have our physical health, we have our mental health, we have our emotional health, spiritual health, all those kinds of things. So yeah, everyone is impacted by mental health, whether that's my clients or anyone that you talk to. Mental health really comes down to your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviours. And so mental health really does impact every aspect of your daily life. And yeah, it's just interesting to see what happens when your thoughts might not be very healthy, or your behaviours might not be very healthy, or your feelings might not be very healthy, and how that plays out day to day. But mental health really is central to who we are as humans. So yeah.
I had anxiety from very young. Um, so yeah, probably since I was like 4 or something, I think. And that made it hard, I guess, socially, like hard to make friends and enjoy the social side of school, especially high school. It was quite bad for me. Um, and I also had PTSD in year 12. Or like that's when it started. So that was really hard doing year 12. And I would just get triggered a lot during class. And that would make it hard to focus and kind of stay up to date. And then today I'm living with a bunch of mental illnesses, so depression, anxiety, PTSD, and borderline personality disorder.
Like myself, I've got quite bad anxiety, and I've got a couple of anxiety disorders that I don't really know the name of, but they've said I have. It's all right mental health wise, but living in such a remote area can pose struggles to mental health, as there isn't really much people around my age. I don't really have many opportunities socially, especially in lockdown.
It doesn't feel right. I don't know. No one can tell from the outside if they really, unless they really ask what's going on. How are they supposed to know? Not supposed. They can't. Like only my parents know about this. Yeah, a few of my close friends.
I'm a massive worrier. I know we all worry to an extent, but started in high school, I was actually formally diagnosed with social anxiety. So I felt really anxious when I would get ready for a party or just go meet friends in the city, thinking that in an ideal scenario it would be such a good thing, but in my head I would think about the what ifs. What if the train doesn't come, or what if I get lost? I always kept thinking about the what ifs, and it wasn't until I actually identified that I actually need to get help and speak to my support systems, because I was so embarrassed for so long. That's when I started helping myself by identifying how I was feeling. And I still do feel anxious, but not as much compared to how I was feeling in high school, to the point where I wouldn't be physically able to actually go out and see my friends, because I would make myself physically feel sick and not have that energy to be social, because I worked my thoughts so much and always thought about the what if. So
there's a lot of issues with my mental health growing up. A lot of it had to do with lots of different various factors, like identity issues myself, in terms of like my ethnicity. I grew up in Adelaide, which is quite white dominance and lived in areas that were white dominant as well. So I think I had a lot of identity issues, and growing up, with divorced parents and experiencing all the different changes that a lot of young people experience and trying to find myself, and then lots of other different factors. And I think
interesting is that when I think about my Lebanese community and my Australian community, there are more similarities, I think, than there are differences in terms of stigmatization of mental health and how that really impacts us as individuals. But it's just played out differently. I think there's still a lot of understanding and education to go in both communities, but more so in my Lebanese community, where in my tribal community in Lebanon, it's a tribal community, which means it's a different kind of civilization to how we are like here, which means that if something kind of happens with someone, like people get killed. So it's like someone in that community is far less likely to speak out about mental health or mental illness that they might be experiencing, because the stakes are that much higher, and it's still very much regarded as that person's depressed, they have PTSD, oh, they're messed up, there's something not right in their brain. And as a result, it is stigmatized in a similar way that it is in Australia, but the consequences are just a little bit different in terms of, your physical safety might be more at risk than it might be in our communities over here. But at the same time, you're not necessarily risk-free for speaking out about mental health or mental illness here as well.
At that time I was in Malaysia, and Malaysia is still very much a patriarchal society. And most of the doctors are men. So my gynecologist was a man, the psychiatrist I saw was a man, and they don't really consult. They just tell, and they assume that they know everything. Now, I'm not saying that women are much better, or that there are some men that are not sensitive, but I think in general in Malaysia, the society just accepts that doctors knows best, and nobody questions it. And since then, I've learned doctor doesn't always know best. So sometimes it's good to do a little bit more investigation of your own. Yeah.
My Indian community, again, I think it's something that we don't really talk about, and so we don't identify as mental health, or even if we know ourselves that there's something wrong with us mentally, or there's a mental health issue, we don't want to voice it out to others, or we don't want to let our friends know or let our family members know, because of the shame that comes along with it. And I know in other communities, it's something that's, that's not looked down upon. It's something that's widely accepted. But in our community, it's still very taboo. It's not something that's talked about. So I think because of that, we have a lot of underlying issues, and we don't talk about it I know personally, if I had something going on, I would have to think 1,000 times before I actually reach out for help and go to a mental health professional.
I feel like in my community, and I think I'll speak on the communities that I mentioned before. So a lot of the ones that are based on like identity, physical identity. So, my blackness, even to, like just me as a woman, or me as South Sudanese, things like that. I feel like the barriers in those groups are very common, and I feel like they're very, like the underlying causes for all of them are the same. So I'll just list those, because I feel like access is a big one. Access to information, correct information, access to like the resources that are needed. I feel like stigma, that's one for everyone, despite, what cultural background you're from. But I do feel like a lot of other backgrounds can be a lot more accommodating or accepting of such things, because they kind of have the knowledge of it. But I feel like for us communities, either, first generation immigrants, or like new to societies where these things are being discussed, it's all very different and very like taboo to us. So I feel like stigma, access, as well as just like, I feel like ourselves as well. Like sometimes we can be our own barriers, in terms of like, being in denial, not wanting to seek help, or like